Hello, my name is Inês Veiga. I'm a design educator and researcher based in Lisbon, Portugal. And the essay I'm presenting is a speculative exploration of ways to approach sustainability learning in product design education. It departs from the activities developed within a course unit called Sustainability of Products and Services in the master's degree in product design at the Lisbon School of Architecture. And more specifically, the essay focuses on an experience-based exercise that took place in the academic year of 2017 and 2018, where design students and migrant entrepreneurs were invited to pair up and explore alternative futures based on the entrepreneur's specific abilities and day-to-day practices in Tapada das Mercês, Sintra, Greater Lisbon. The experience became something of particular interest when, at some point, the design students claimed they were not learning sustainability. And so the essay is, or became, a retrospective reflection from my perspective in the role of educator on how sustainability was articulated and why it was not experienced by the design students, and how experiential learning as a critical pedagogy contributed or not to that learning experience. But as I try every year to involve students in processes that engage sustainability as a generative practice rather than an afterthought, and considering that sustainability is a process that involves thinking and acting futures, I turn to critical and speculative design to reflect about the project as something that prioritizes social and environmental issues and a commitment to co-design, but also that it could help to better highlight and describe and explain how futures emerged in the co-design experience. And in this review, I also found this ethnographic experiential futures framework, which became an important contribution to better understand how, or the processes of futuring and social foresight, which traced a crucial parallel to some of the concepts that were, in the beginning, foundational for the activity itself. So the goal of the essay is ultimately, through critical and speculative design, to explore this activity with students, which in my perspective, or in my experience, was a fruitful and provocative speculation of what is and might be the design for sustainability classroom. So Transistórias, which was the name of the activity, set off at the invitation of the Aga Khan Foundation, and the project represented an opportunity for learners to engage sustainability through encountering real-life situations. This argument is not new, that education for sustainability in architecture and design must become a change platform where design is exercised differently. So in this view, the project framed a learning activity that was explicitly informed by critical pedagogies, more specifically those which advocate the benefits of experiential learning as pragmatic engagements with reality. And in the context of design education, such critical pedagogies and perspectives point to the importance of learning design through real projects and active participation in communities. So these are the authors which provided the basis for discussing Transistórias as an instance of experience-based learning in the context of product design education. But as an exercise, more specifically on learning sustainability, Transistórias set out from a perspective of the future as something to be rehearsed. Drawing from the Designing Anthropological Futures manifesto, I argue that this idea of rehearsing or prototyping futures framed at that time a more pragmatic way to practice designing for sustainability that complements the ideas of becoming futural and starting at the end, which are advocated by the author Tony Fry. So for the duration of one semester, the project was divided into three main stages. So participants had to pair up according to mutual interests, get to know each other, and to help in this process, the groups had to make a video narrative that would unlock or unfold the abilities of the entrepreneurs, their stories of life, and day-to-day practices. Then we move to roundtables and collective debate sessions to critically raise the most relevant questions in each group and identify the network of stakeholders, resources involved within those practices, as well as brainstorming ideas and framing potential scenarios. And in the end, the groups would move to prototype an idea or design a toolkit that would serve as an outcome of their collaboration, and that would stand as a vision of an alternative future for the entrepreneur. Approaching the end of the semester, the students finished all the materials, but also shared their concerns about the process. And in our final class, they claimed they were not learning sustainability, and so they decided not to collaborate further. And these were some of the reactions or the most the things they wrote in their diary board, which was a tool that accompanied them throughout the process. And about the tools, you can read more in the paper. What was interesting was that in the absence of the design students from this point on, the entrepreneurs drew enormous stimulants and confidence to continue. And so for a final show of the work done by the groups, some of the entrepreneurs developed prototypes themselves with support of the foundation, and others ventured to do something different, also recognizing these diverse possibilities within their own possibilities and abilities. And so the Transistórias exhibition took place in April 2018 in Sintra, and unfortunately only 2 students attended. So seeing how differently the project was experienced by both the students and the entrepreneurs, on one hand, the students' conflict about these images of the future that were far from these images of sustainable development that they have, so that we were not working with. And on the other hand, this processual safety that the entrepreneurs felt to actually experiment with alternative representations of themselves and of their own lived experience. So one of the main takeaways, or my first reflections, were about this idea that it was not a student-centered pedagogy. And if the project, or if Transistórias was not working to broaden the students' knowing and approach to sustainability, then the activity did not work as that redirective platform. So it probably remained an instance for doing something social. However, critical and speculative design allowed to clarify some of the intricate episodes of Transistórias in terms of contributing to sustainability education. And so I just briefly mentioned 2 of the episodes which I developed in the paper, in the essay. So one is about the application of an object which the students saw while filming the practice of rasta making. So suddenly they imagined that this crocheting needle that the entrepreneur uses could be a product that would represent Rastafarian hairstyle salons in the future. And so it was interesting because at some point in the process, the students abandoned the needle because the concerns of the entrepreneur were much more serious than an object, such as a needle, a crocheting needle. But then also the object became something that the entrepreneur took with himself to prototype, and as something that would help them make his case to open an hairstyle salon. So it was interesting on that point. And so, but the learnings of this episode more specifically were around this idea that the students were in this kind of locally centric mode of designing for sustainability. So they were making something more with what is already there, with what is already life affirming. This idea that also the small scale made the boundaries much more identifiable and co-generative, more open to be relatable. And also this idea that then the participants were actually engaging a different kind of ethos or a different kind of ethics of design. And then another episode is about this idea that which I call the impossible object versus an empathy bias, which is the example of when another group of students actually proposes to make a documentary to disclose the struggles of the entrepreneurs who roast and sell corn in the streets. But the entrepreneurs were really into this idea that they had from the beginning of having a food cart, and that food cart that would provide dignity and would function as this controversial product to question their place and to actually demand their place in the public space. It's so what I reflect on about this episode is this kind of what is the ability or the foresight ability of designers in this idea of, or this negotiation between making futures tangible and concrete. It's not so much about the way we tell the story, but more about what is the image of the future that we are actually implementing or that we are actually making happen. So just as a final remark, so what can we take away from the paper? What I think is more important to say is that this paper or this essay is grounded on my experience of Transistórias. So the arguments are situated and do not claim to be generalizable or conclusive. So I hope that the contribution is to an ongoing debate on what is and might be the sustainability of the design for sustainability classroom, but also I hope to contribute to this, to research and experiment ways of becoming futural in the context of design education, but also in the context of social foresight processes. So thank you very much. Obrigada.
Well, what I was, when things don't go as we expect, when we are really the teaching management in the field, knowing what you know today, do you think you would be able to turn around the situation where really all the students kind of dropped off the project in the middle? Do you think there would be a way of getting them really engaged in the concept of the sustainability? It seems that there was something missing there in really understanding what sustainability means today. And it's such a complex concept that if they're not aware of the different dimensions that sustainability has today, I'm seeing my students having the same problem. So from that point of view, do you think you could manage that in a different way?
Yes, from this distance now, yes, definitely. That was something which I have been thinking about, and also the students pointed out that we should have had more reflective one-on-one moments, which could help them situate themselves within that overwhelming experience. But that there's also something important to say, which is this unit happens in the first semester of the master degree. And so the students usually come directly from the bachelor to the master. And they usually don't have a background or another unit where they thought of sustainability as something or as and so the role of this unit is actually to introduce them into that. And another reflection I had was that maybe it was too soon. It was too soon to involve them in such a complex and demanding process for them.